Welcome to my channel. In this video, following topics are discussed: causes of revolt against Uthman, and a brief look at his character, his reign, and admiration. Please subscribe to the channel to stay updated for more parts in this series. Efforts are made in making these videos helps us spread the message by sharing and like our videos. Please comment for any suggestion or views. Your help is greatly appreciated. Thanks. Causes of revolt. The real causes of the revolt and of the murder of Uthman are to be sought elsewhere. Firstly, there were people in the empire who had accepted Islam not for its virtues, but for its privileges. When the privileges were denied to them because of their misconduct, they tried to do harm to the Khalifa. Abdullah ibn Saba, a Yemenite Jew who had become Muslim for self-interest, took the leading part in the agitation against Uthman. When he was expelled from Basra, Kufa, and Syria successively for his seditious activities, he went to Egypt and began to preach against Uthman. Many were influenced by his preaching, and the power of the rebels thus increased. Several nationalities were also subdued by the sword, and they had subsequently accepted Islam. But still they entertained a definite hatred for the Muslims. Taking the advantage of the disturbance, they now sided with the rebels. Secondly, the rivalry and jealousy among the Quraysh themselves, namely between the house of Hashim and that of the Umayyah, had weakened the power of Uthman and constituted one of the main causes of his failure. Before the birth of Muhammad, peace be upon him, there also existed rivalry between the two dynasties. But under the peaceful reign of Uthman, the tribal jealousy began to rear its head, and when the power of the Umayyads was going to be established, the Hashemites could not tolerate it. The Khalifa granted land in Iraq in place of Makkah to the Quraysh who had left Makkah for Syria. The anti-party began to preach that Uthman was showing favor to the Quraysh, and thus the rivalry between the Quraysh and the non-Quraysh took a serious turn. Had all the Quraysh rallied round Uthman at that critical moment, it would have been possible for him to crush Arab faction, which challenged the authority of the Khalifa. But the cause of his enemy was supported by the Hashemites, who did not want the Umayyads in power. Thirdly, the weak character of Uthman was mainly responsible for his misfortune. Uthman was a very simple, pious, and kind-hearted Khalifa. Simplicity and leniency have no place in administration, and particularly at that critical period when a strong hand was needed to run the administration. This quality was essentially wanting in Uthman. He was too good a man who could not believe that others could do mischief to him and to it. On many occasions, he forgave people even for their crimes. This leniency encouraged the evildoers to carry out their evil intentions. They began to spread discontent against the Khalifa, and also created trouble for his governors against whom charges of crime were brought before the Khalifa. Uthman's kindness gave them a long rope, and soon they became a power that could not be easily crushed. The different parties had different views, but with all their differences they stuck to one point: the deposing of Uthman and uprooting the Umayyads. To achieve this end, they joined together and proceeded quite systematically, entered into Medina, and placed their grievances, the seditionists, before the Khalifa. It is said that Uthman promised to redress the grievances of the people, but Marwan, the chief advisor of the Caliph, played a foul game with them by writing to the governors to murder the deputationists on their arrival. It is also said that when the insurgents demanded the recall of the governor of Egypt and the substitution of Muhammad bin Abu Bakr instead, the Khalifa, without any question, acceded to their request and handed over to them the letter of appointment. But yet they were not pleased with the Khalifa. They took Medina by surprise and raised the shouts, "Vengeance, vengeance." Ali asked their reason, and they produced the letter under the seal of the Khalifa, addressed to the governor of Egypt. containing the instruction that as soon as those people would reach Egypt, they should be put to death, and he should consider his order of dismissal canceled. It is stated that the deputationists intercepted the letter when a special courtier of the Khalifa, as carrying it to Egypt. It can be rightly asked, how could all of them return at one and the same time, when this letter was caught only by those who were going to Egypt? The road to Basra, Kufa, and Egypt lies in different directions. It was absolutely impossible for physical beings to reach the capital at one and the same time. They had forged the letter and had planned to take the Madinites unaware. The Khalifa was completely ignorant of any such letter. He declared it by a solemn oath, but they did not believe him. They demanded, "Whether you wrote it or not, you are unfit to be the Khalifa, and you must abdicate." They further threatened him with death. To this the Khalifa replied, "Death I do not fear and consider it the easiest thing. But I shall not fight with you, for if I wished to fight, I would have thousands here to fight for me. But I have no heart to shed a drop of Muslim blood." The seditionists surrounded the house of the Khalifa, and while he was reading the Quran in the midst of his family, he was caught and assassinated by 2 Egyptians on the 17th of June, 656 A.D. His wife Naila, while trying to save her husband, lost her fingers. The assassination of Uthman had far-reaching consequences throughout the period. Mr. Wellhausen, a famous German historian, says the murder of Uthman was more epoch-making than almost any other event of Islamic history. Unity of Islam, which was maintained by the first 2 caliphs, was lost, and serious dissensions arose among the Muslims. The Muslim world was divided into 2 parties, the Umayyads and the Hashemites. The Umayyads, under the leadership of Muawiyah, fought for a long time with Ali for the blood of Uthman, and ultimately established the Umayyad dynasty. Mr. Joseph says, "The assassination of Uthman was a signal for civil war. The civil war first began with Ali, Talha, and Zubair, and then with Ali and Muawiyah. It at last came to an end in the tragedy of Karbala. With Ali's accession to power, the authority of Medina ceased to exist, and that of Damascus began to increase. On the murder of Uthman, the provincial cities struggled for supremacy, and its effect was soon felt." The history of Uthman's period has been overcolored by the jealousy and animosity between the Umayyads and the Abbasids. When the Abbasids came to power, they tried to tarnish the history of the Umayyads. William Muir says in this connection, "Most traditions attribute the writing and sealing of the order to Marwan, the Khalifa's unpopular cousin, who throughout the narration receives constant abuse as the author of Uthman's troubles. But all this is manifestly tinged by the Abbasid and anti-Umayyad prejudices." He further says, "According to some authorities, Uthman presented the royal share of the booty as a free gift to Marwan, Enias prime minister, and they add that this was one of the grounds of Uthman's impeachment, but it reads like a party calumny. It is also known to the students of history that Umar and Ali, for whom the insurgents fought and even murdered Uthman, were assassinated. So it will not be proper to judge Uthman in the light of assassination. The history of the Khalifa should be thoroughly rewritten. Uthman's reign. Nobody can deny the fact that the territorial expansion of the Empire of Islam was greatly affected during the reign of Uthman. He not only put down the rebellions with a heavy hand, but also annexed Afghanistan, Turkestan, and Khan to the Empire of Islam. The Roman hordes were driven off, and over and above, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Asia Minor were added to the Empire of Islam. It was in the reign of Uthman that the first naval conquest of Islam began, and the island of Cyprus was conquered by the Muslim ships. Alexandria was recaptured from the Romans, and the power of Caesar was finally crushed. All these show that the power of Islam was at the zenith of its glory during the reign of Uthman, administration of Uthman. The Khalifa accepted nothing from the public treasury. On the other hand, he liberally spent his own wealth for public good. He did not change the existing system of administration. The Council of Consultation was maintained, and all affairs were settled by this council. All the departments of the state worked as during the reign of Umar. The revenue department was in a flourishing condition. Many new buildings were built, and roads, bridges, mosques, and guest houses were constructed in different parts of the empire. To protect Medina against floods, a huge dam was also constructed. The Prophet's mosque was extended and rebuilt with stone. Arrangements for the supply of water were also made at Medina. Character of Uthman. Uthman was upright, dutiful, and generous. In chastity and integrity, Uthman was as firm as a mountain. Modesty was the salient feature of his character. The Prophet himself was so much pleased with him that, after the death of his 2 daughters, had there been any other daughter, he would have given her in marriage to Uthman. The Khalifa was rolling in plenty, yet he contented himself with plain dress and plain food. He took special care to collect the different parts of the Holy Quran, and under him the different parts of the Quran were put into one volume. His love for his brother Muslims made him sacrifice his own life rather than wield the sword against them. A man who sacrificed his life for the solidarity of Islam and the good of his subjects can easily be called a true patriot and a benign ruler. Please stay tuned for next part. Thanks.